me.
All right, so we're going to talk about, usually we talk about the types of incidents that lead to me calling you as a personal injury lawyer. Today we're going to talk about what happens just after that, right? And you've assessed and there is a case.
Yes.
So when I say there is a case, I automatically think of a courtroom.
Right. And you're like most people, many people who come in to see us, one of the reservations they have is, I don't want a trial. I can't bear the thought of going to trial.
Yeah, but I mean, lots of people have a hard time public speaking in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing. There's not a lot of public speaking during a trial, but that's what people think, that they're going to be up there and they're going to be cross-examining. It's not really like that.
Okay.
But quite apart from that, very few cases end up in a courtroom.
And why is that?
Because most of them settle out of court. Whether that's directly with an insurance company or, at the courtroom door, very few cases actually make it to court. Like fewer than 4%.
So there you go. There's automatically, you've got a number there. Fewer than 4% is quite astonishing. And that's really because of resources, right? Because an insurance company can assess the situation and whether or not it's worth putting out the incredible amount of resources for them.
Right. Most of the time, there's a range that I know and the insurance company knows the case is going to settle somewhere in that range. And it's just a question of I want to push them to the top of the range, and they want to push me to the bottom of the range. So if you're within that range, what often ends up happening is you split the difference, or depending on the strength of my witnesses, my evidence, their witnesses, their evidence, it sort of fluctuates within that range.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at law of any kind, but especially personal injury law, when you're so familiar with how this whole thing works, your assessment is really, has to be very good, right?
Yeah, and it's not that difficult to do. I mean, because we're dealing with...
Well, don't sell yourself short.
Well, it's pretty, for an experienced personal injury lawyer like myself, it's not that difficult to do. You can easily look at cases that have been decided beforehand and look at the types of injuries. And there are, over the years, there have been thousands and thousands of personal injury cases. So I can say, okay, this lady has a broken arm where she's had 2 surgeries, and she had a job where she needed to use her arm for part of it, and now she's debilitated on an ongoing basis. So I have those as the parameters. And then I research and I say, okay, the range of damages for that case for pain and suffering is between 70 and 110,000.
Okay.
So I know that's the range. And so where she fits within that range is going to depend on things like her age, how she comes across as a witness, what kinds of volunteer things she does, her job, whether she has children, all of those things.
And then what about also the incident itself? Would that play into where you would come in the range?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because people ask me all the time, they were not remorseful, or they were looking at their phone, or whatever. The truth is, once you're negligent, you're negligent.
Right.
So whether you're a little bit negligent or a lot negligent, our system is not really set up to punish the person. Either liability is usually a yes or no question. Sometimes there's a question of whether or not the injured person contributed. So that can play a factor, but that's something we can negotiate. But yeah, it's not really, the degree of at fault isn't really a big factor.
Okay, we're going to talk more about this, about the misconceptions, and I think a lot of us are Americanized in our thought of law, and we're going to talk about how that's very different than the Canadian system. You just brought up punitive a little bit, so we'll talk about that and a lot more with Brenda Hollingsworth from O.J. Hollingsworth Personal Injury Law.